Lana, thanks for joining.
No, thank you.
Look, as always, we want to go back. We want your story really into the world of education.
Okay.
Did you have a passion for being in it or did you fall into it? But yeah, take us back as far as you like.
Okay, so I'll take you right back to the beginning.
Yes.
Left school with some GCSEs, did all right.
Yeah.
Ended up going to a local sixth form because I didn't know what to do. Did my AS levels and then flunked out. Didn't want to do my A levels, too much like hard work, bit of a rebel. And ended up working in banking for, I want to say, about 7 to 8 years. Learned a lot around banking in the commercial world. But it was moving, so went through the 2008 crisis and it was moving in a direction that I didn't necessarily want to go into. So it was more sales, didn't quite fancy flogging credit cards for old ladies, etc. And by that point, I had one of my children really young at 20, so I needed something that had more work-life balance.
Right.
So I set on a journey and thought, what can I do? What does banking give me? Because I'd come out with these qualifications that meant nothing on the outside world. They meant everything in the bank, but nothing on the outside world. So I decided to educate myself on an evening at college, doing accountancy, which was hilarious. Because I don't know if you know this, but in accountancy, it's the opposite way to a bank. So it's like a mirror image.
Right.
So I used to get all the transactions when I was doing my accountancy the wrong way around. But I managed to get through it. I was like the worst student in the class, basically. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew that I had an interest in finance, but still not quite sure what it is that I wanted to do. I ended up volunteering for a charity through my parents. They sort of said, you can do a bit of volunteer work here, they'll help you, in accountancy. And I did that for about 6 to 12 months whilst working so I left the bank and I started working for a head office of a big organisation close to me, which was, again, a learning curve. So I was immersed in a really commercial world whilst working for a charity voluntarily and bringing up, by that point, 2 children. And I decided, okay, I've got enough experience now. I want to do something that's got a career behind it. Yeah. But again, I needed that work-life balance. So I thought, I know. What about schools? That seems like a good idea. And I knew that every job application that I looked at for a school, it said you had to have previous experience in a school. Yeah. So I was like, well, how do you get that without actually working in a school? How does this work? So I did a little bit more volunteer work. And then I saw this one job advert for a finance officer in one of the most deprived areas in Doncaster. And I thought, do you know what? I'm gonna go for that. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get myself in the door and I'm gonna try and sell myself into this role because they're not gonna just accept my application because I've got no experience working in a school. So I went in, met with the head. She was brand new to headship in that September. She'd worked there previously as a deputy. She wanted to take on the world. She had, for me, quite a good business mindset. So we kind of aligned on some of the things that I talked about that I'd done in my previous roles. Went through the interview process and she gave me a chance. And I say she gave me a chance because she did take a chance. Like I'd not proven at this point as any sort of finance officer. I'd worked a little bit in a head office doing some finance work, but nothing major. And you know what? I went there for personal reasons, obviously work-life balance, but I absolutely fell in love with education from start to finish. Yeah. Loved
it's a common theme that people speak to, like, when I'm in it.
Absolutely. And I've never looked back. Like for me, I know that I could probably earn more money, less hours, all the rest of it, taken back into private industry, but I don't want to. I absolutely love making a difference. Yeah. And so, we were a maintained school then under a local authority and these academies were sort of on the horizon and I thought, aye, what's this? So when I started to learn a little bit more around it, what I quickly realised from a personal perspective was that gives me the best of both. That gives me that commercial business side that I absolutely fell in love with in the banking world and doing something for the right reasons in the public sector. So for me, it was the perfect combination. Because academies have got the freedom to operate like a business, but for a good reason, educating children. So and on another personal level, I thought, well, there's going to be career paths in this because actually these multi-million-pound organisations are going to need expertise. Yep. So I started to think and sort of keep one eye on the ball that actually there'll be something in this personally for development whilst doing a job that I love. And I was really lucky. The head teacher, she's still there now, absolutely fantastic. She gave me the opportunities. She allowed me to do courses in leadership and management, fully invested in me. I had a couple of progressions there. But more than the best bit for me was that we took that school as an academy. So I learned how the process of moving a school into an academy.
Yeah.
But more than that, we were the third school in a founding trust. So instead of joining one of the big trusts, the governors and the heads and the leadership team made the decision alongside 2 other heads and governors and leadership teams to create a brand new multi-academy trust. Yeah. The business manager and a head in one of the schools became the chief exec and the chief projects officer, and then they employed a chief finance officer. So a really small team to start with, which allowed me the opportunity to see how this all works.
Yeah.
And I did a bit of dipping in and out of that central team whilst staying as a school business. So at that point, I was a finance manager in one of the schools. And it just gave me the opportunity to see how things were implemented, the change that has to happen, all of these brand new regulations that multi-academy trusts had to adhere to. Yeah. That before that, we were just hidden in the local authority.
Yeah.
So it gave me really good exposure to what it needs to run this new business that we've got. And then from there, I actually left to go on maternity leave. I had a third child, which was a bit of a surprise. Yeah. Happy 30th to me. My husband always laughs that it was the dearest present he ever bought me. So it sort of changed things a little bit for me, because then I was coming back on maternity leave. What do I want to do? You sort of pause, don't you, and reflect and think, actually, what's the next step for me personally? I then went to be a school business manager within the same trust, but for a school that was more local to me and needed a little bit more support around that business manager role. So when I walked in, there was a huge leak that had happened, that had got no heating, the roof was falling in, it was financially unstable.
Then, right? Okay.
Yeah, so it was, and then COVID happened. So I started in March 2020 and we went into lockdown. At the same time, they were implementing a brand new MIS system. So the reason I'm telling you all this is because that challenged me as a business manager. I had to rise to this challenge. Luckily, I knew the head, and she's still one of my great friends today. But what a challenge! I didn't know any of the staff.
Yeah,
and I've got to roll out all these changes. I am the person on the ground for health and safety, and it's COVID. Staffing's a nightmare. So it took all of the years that I'd learned. So by that time, I've done about 10 years in education. It took all of that experience to sort of navigate the next 2 years of this huge business manager test, shall we say. And whilst there, I quickly realised that, this is a challenge, but I've risen to it and I'm all right. And I think I'm ready for a next step. So I decided to look for a bit more personal development at this point. Like, what am I doing? What's my next step? Is it a natural progression into a trust role, or do I need to? I actually contemplated coming out completely and taking my skills into sort of back into private sector, or do I go into charity sector? But then I happened to go on a course that was facilitated by a local provider, and the chief exec of Nexus, Warren, was one of the speakers. So he was there to talk about Nexus direction, strategic objectives, and how he was a non-teaching chief exec. I knew Warren because...
I was going to say, did you know him? Right, okay.
So I knew Warren because the chief exec of my old trust and him set up the 2 trusts at the same time. Right. So, and they had a very similar ethos, if you like, around what a multi-academy trust should look like, and that collaborative model with schools. So it's not top down, it's collaborative with the schools, and it serves the communities that them schools sit in. I know from working in different schools, communities drive a lot of what that school needs, and they're very different. And both multi-academy trusts that I've worked for have that ethos. It's a personal choice of mine to work for a multi-academy trust that shares that, because that's a personal belief for me. So I knew they were very similar, but hearing him speak made me think, you are very similar, but you're now heading in a much bigger direction than where I am heading in my current trust. So I looked on the website. They'd got some jobs. And I thought...
I love it. The ambitiousness in you was straight on. Like, right, what have we got?
What's he up to? What's going on at Nexus? So so this is the funny story. So I applied for, at the time, it was an assistant chief finance officer role. So you'd think, I should be all right at that. She's done finance.
Yeah.
She's managed, that was one of my strengths in my last trust. Anything to do with finance, ask Lana, she's good at that. Other than the chief finance officer, managing budgets, fine. So I went for this interview, and part of the interview there was a task to do, and it was around moving journals in spreadsheets. Well, I absolutely messed that up, like royally. So I walked into my interview, and the first thing I said was, yeah, I messed that up. There's like 0 points. You're not going to be able to give me a job. And because I didn't know what else to say, I thought I've got to own it and admit that I've absolutely flunked that. I don't know why, just did. So it's still a running joke that I failed spreadsheets. But so I went through this interview process, obviously didn't get the job.
Oh, I thought there was going to be a nice...
no.
I thought they were going to turn around and go,
no,
you're in.
No, he happily rang me and told me why I'd not got the job. And funny enough, I'd seen a colleague of mine that I'd worked with previously also go for the same interview, and he was a chief finance officer in the trust. So I thought, well, I ain't got it anyway. Easier. Yeah. But I thought, do you know what? It kind of took the pressure off the interview for me, because I felt like, well, I've not got it anyway, so I might as well just tell them what I'm about, what I really believe in. And a lot of the questions were sort of open, so it allowed me to talk about the bits that I'm passionate about. It wasn't necessarily the finance side, but a lot of that commercial background of mine and how I put that into the work that I've done as a business manager. So looking for efficiencies, looking for better ways of working, taking what they do in the private sector, bringing it into education, really holding down and knuckling down on suppliers and contracts. So all of that came out of this interview. And Warren rang me, or I think it might have been Joel, who's my boss, and said, yeah, you didn't get the job. We both know why, and we had a laugh about it. But then he did say that there were other roles in the pipeline because of the growth and development of the trust, and would that be something I was interested in? And they'd picked up on interview that one of the strengths of mine was procurement. They'd got this procurement role coming out, and they agreed that on the back of that interview, they could actually take me as procurement. So they offered me a job in procurement. Now I'm sorry.
The fact they came back for you, though, they saw something, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which is lovely then.
Yeah.
That's a really nice feeling that actually they want me for some reason. So yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, so that, you're right. It was it's never happened to me that before. I've never, I've never had somebody say to me, we'll keep you in mind, and then actually ring me.
And actually come back. Yeah, it's usually just a passive comment, isn't it, to get rid of it.
That old chestnut.
They came back.
Yeah, they came back. And at the time I thought, well, I do procurement. I know I do it, but not on the level that you're asking me to for a trust that's growing. And I don't know. I thought, am I out my depth? There was a moment where I thought, am I out my depth with this? But they offered me, so I took a sideways move. It was progression in my mind, because I thought, well, there's opportunities there to learn. And I thought, if nothing else, everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. Yeah. I've got to take this opportunity and grasp it with both hands. So I did. And it was one of the best things I ever did. The learning curve and the journey that I've been on, looking at it across, now it's 17 schools. So I'm not just having impact on one school, I'm having impact on 17 schools and all those children. Yeah. So what I thought was worthwhile in a school, what drives me to get out of bed in the morning, and I've never had a morning where I don't want to go to work. Yeah. Now it's like, wow, I've got 17 schools to deliver with. Yeah.
So talk to us about Nexus. So you've been there for how long?
So I started in July 2022.
Right, okay, so a couple of years. Over a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you came in to oversee
procurement.
The whole of procurement.
Yeah, so originally brought in to spearhead some of the bigger contracts. So looking at how, at that point it was very much driven around cost saving. Yeah. So how much money can we save if we aggregate spend as schools together with that collaborative approach in mind? Yeah. Getting people on board. How do we do that? And how much money can we save? Yeah. That's the easy bit, if you ask me. We can do that. It's no problem. The bit that we've done a lot, and my role, so when I started, I was procurement lead, and now obviously my title is head of business transformation. And that's very much because we've been on a journey, and procurement is a tool in my toolkit, but a lot of what I do is that transformation piece. So it's the projects, capital and estates.
That's what threw me a bit, because when you said you were leading on procurement, but then I looked at your title and I'm like, what's that? So thank you for clearing that up, because you kind of told me, and I'm like, so what did you do?
I know, I did it.
So literally, your job was way more than procurement though at this point, isn't it? You're doing everything.
I love it. But I think that's what happens in education. So it's a niche. So you can't advertise a role and say, hi, do you want to come and do all these
jobs?
Who's going to go for that? How are you going to attract someone from private industry across all them categories? Because they're all specialists in their own right.
Yeah.
I always call it jack of all trades and a master of none. But business manager on a school level gives you that oversight of all of those areas just on a smaller scale. So the reason I ended up just through people naturally leaving the organisation and these sort of roles becoming available, they rejigged things as part of the growth. So before they used to have governance and projects sat in an area, right. But they very quickly identified that projects, capital expenditure all sits around procurement. Obviously, I'd had experience from being a business manager. And at this point, the main bulk of our estates was contracted out. So we'd got health and safety that was on a contract. We'd got assets on a contract. So where we now haven't, at that time we had. So it was natural for me as procurement lead to manage the contract, if you like. But I think what my boss would say, what Joel would say is that the work that we've done, it is transformational and it does sit across all these different areas. So the word procurement doesn't quite fit with what we're doing at this point.
Yeah.
I oversee quite a lot, but it all interlinks.
Yeah,
which
quite
is
nicely.
Amazing.
And we're talking procurement across everything in the trust. So we're talking from pens to roofs.
Yeah.
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 So that
It's
difference.
crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Someone's telling me that you get a lot of people trying to sell you chairs and tables.
Oh yeah.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, it's fun. So one of the best things for me is answering a sales call and they're like, yeah, and I'm like, which category are we on again? Like pens, pencils. Are you talking about surveys on a roof? But you can't. So in the procurement world, even in the public sector, there's no other industry that you would manage all of those categories.
No,
you just wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
No. So we've got an advert out at the minute for a procurement and contracts officer, right. And I've been really hesitant to put how many categories is on it because I think that's going to put someone off. But the reality of that is the variety is just, it's so fun because I'm literally jumping from meeting to meeting. 1 minute I'm talking about solar panels on a roof, and the next thing I'm talking about supply staff that we need to put a contract variation around. It's that diverse, but I love it.
So do you have your own in-house framework then that you've created that suits you? Because I think with a lot of, I'll be honest, my take on framework, I come from a construction world. Frameworks, they go out of fashion very quickly because they get locked in 5 years.
Yeah.
A year later, what was done a year ago is out of date.
Absolutely.
So I've got my thing about frameworks. I won't say too much about that. But you've obviously in a position with a procurement team, you can ultimately create your own framework that suits you. Is that what you did? Or
so we're still on a journey.
Okay.
We recently did the Procurement Excellence Programme Award, so through SIPS, so the best in the world, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. And that has given me, I would say it's given me a different insight into what's the right way of approaching frameworks and the tools that, we've got to be able to deliver the job. So I look at it, what is it that we need in those classrooms? What is it that we need on the ground and how do we get there? So where sometimes we've put in a preferred supplier list, where that's almost like an internal infrastructure of support, which people would argue is a framework. We've done that ourselves. Other times, I need a quick route to market. I'll use another public sector framework. But I'll be honest, we push those commercial boundaries. I will push within the compliance and the regs for whatever it is that we need to deliver what's needed on the ground. I don't like our procurement to be seen as red tape because I think that's, a reputation that procurement has got. We see it as an enabler and we live by that. So whatever we need to enable the people who are doing the job on the ground, teaching our children, we'll find a way to do it. That's sort of the way that we operate, if you like. Yeah,
it's really interesting. It's good getting insights. I see a lot of frameworks. I'll be honest, frameworks just appear every other day. There's a new one. And all of a sudden they've just become a money mechanism for businesses to go, do you know what, let's bunch all them together and we'll sell it. And they've lost kind of the quality of what they were designed to do. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think some of them have. And a lot of them aren't always fit for purpose. So if you've got a multi-academy trust that's operating secondaries, primaries and specials, the needs of those schools are very different. We don't fit in a box. Even the communities that we serve mean that we need different things in different schools. So we use frameworks for things that are really easy. So, I don't know, laptops. That's really easy for us to just find a compliant way of getting to market.
Yeah.
But we have to be creative as well, and we have to find other ways, because you're right, frameworks can be really restrictive at times.
Yeah.
And we have to find those that have got the right ethos for us. So we we want a lot of social value back from our procurement. We see that as an amazing vehicle that we've got that we need to ride on the back on. I think suppliers and also sort of customers, they don't always find that sweet spot with that. It's just a box ticked, and it shouldn't be. We should really home in on that, because those are the bits that
do you know what though?
Value.
I guess it's not everyone's got the resources off there.
No.
So when, with you obviously being quite, you're definitely an ideas person and loves to drive change, but sometimes you're going to a trust where they've got one person looking after 100 schools,
and I get it.
They just go, I need to tick that box. But you're right. If you look at not frameworks, but procurement, the opportunity now for you to put a new roof on your building and get a full biodiversity set up at the same time has never been easier.
Yeah.
And people miss it.
They do.
All the time. I want all my windows doing in my schools, and while you're with it, I want a new anthill building. I know it sounds crazy, but from a social value point of view,
why not?
That is why you need that creativity. Have you tried anything like that, or pushed the boundaries to
Of course I have. Yeah.
Any big wins where you've kind of build me a new tennis court?
Funny enough, currently we've got RLB, or our assets partner. Absolutely love working with them. They've got a local office in Sheffield. Known them a long time. They're leaning on their supply chain to complete a cafe in our main head office building, where our young people will gain work experience and qualifications. So it's a small project, but while they're doing the project in the building, that's what they're adding as social value. Yes. And it will add value to our community, to our young people. It's spotting the opportunities. And a lot of the time, suppliers, because the other side of it is, what I've found in some schools is, they're scared of suppliers. They're scared of that dialogue with them. They think they're just out to rip them off, if you like. So we're fair, and I've opened the door, and the suppliers have fed back that they don't actually know what to give us back in social value. Yeah. They want to do it, but they don't know how. So one of the biggest pieces of work that we're doing at the moment is, for us, we call it the wedding list, which was an idea from one of our directors. But it's basically just a list of, what does social value mean to Nexus? Yeah. How can they add value? So that then suppliers aren't lost in giving back. They can just say, Copy School wants a pond. Well, they can give that through time. So this is what we need. So we're building that now.
That's really good you are, because honestly, you can tap into anything. Yeah. If that pot of money doesn't go far. Like say £1 million across, X amount of schools, it can be gone on one roof. So, you've got to be very strategic. But I've constantly said to people, don't be scared of your supply chain. Actually, make a list of what you want. Yeah. Do you want someone to come in and do talks for the school for a year? Do you want all your site staff training in ladder training? Yeah. But half of them don't know what they don't know what to give, and the schools don't know what they want. No. So they're like, what can you give us and what do you want? So this is something you're building then, which will go into your kind of, go into your tender documents ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got we've always had a big emphasis on social value in our tender documents anyway. But we haven't really been specific. So things around the waste management contract, for example, we were quite clear of what we wanted. We wanted less landfill. We wanted them to educate our children by putting marketing on bins, etc. That was a really, really easy one. But the majority, like the cleaning contract, it's quite difficult. How do they know what to give us? So we are working with, because of the way we're set up as a multi-academy trust, and we want to work collaboratively, we have what you call a school resource manager network that I lead alongside my colleagues at Central Team, and they are our local expert, so in school business resource management, and they are working with us on the procurement and commercial side, building it, making it better. One of their roles is to look at what their school needs for social value. How do we impact the community? How do we make, sustainability better for our school? Yeah. And then we'll bring that back to the table, and we'll create this list that will be on our website. We'll leave it really open. This is what social value means to us. And therefore, whenever we're quoting social value in our documentation, that suppliers understand what it means to us, and we just work our way down the list, basically.
Very much like what you've got with the main contractor tier ones now. They're going out to tender, and 40% nearly on some of their bid has to be social value.
So it should be.
So but ain't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning, early days, I'll be honest, I think I was same as everyone. You kind of think, what's this fluff like? What is it? It's just, you know, fugazi. And it was, you know, we're going to put 100 apprentices on site. Well, prove it.
Prove it, yeah.
They can't.
No.
Whereas now, you've got to show data.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to learn from the construction world. And do you have any cross kind of collaboration with how are they doing it? And
so a lot of... Because we have a lot of capital expenditure projects, not just because of the condition that our buildings come in. We all know it's national. We've got issues in the estate. We've got the resources to be able to work on that, and that's what we're doing. But we have the added factor with special schools that the building's not always fit for purpose. That's based on the needs of our children and young people. So we have to expand. We have to refurbish, reconstruct areas, etc. So I've been through quite a lot of learning with Nexus, because for me, a roof's easy, roof off, roof on. Yes. And that's what I'd been exposed to previously, boilers, roofs, your typical easy projects.
Your safe stuff.
Yeah. Easy, tick a box, done. With this, we've now got SCAR, so we've got school capital allocation, but we also have our local authorities supporting us with individual projects within schools where we are expanding, for example, to take more children, young people, and provide them a place in our schools. So I've had to learn how the construction world works on a closer basis, if you like, to understand what, I could bore you all day long with principal design, as you could me, but what's been really interesting and working with our assets partner and working with our construction companies is they've got to know what it means to us for, what does a good delivery look like for us? And it's individual on the needs of the school. I've learned absolutely loads. I've learned how they price a job, how do they, look at a building and reconfigure it. Just looking at the four walls on the outside and what's load bearing. So I've learned a lot, but also in the way that they operate, because they are private industry. So from my old banking days, I'm really interested in that. How do they make efficiencies? Where do they save money? Where do they add value? And I've actually enjoyed that side of it.
Yeah, you're evolving.
I'm evolving.
Yeah. Don't be whoever's listening from Nexus, they'll be thinking, no. But, you are extremely ambitious. You can see that from your journey. And as you go, new doors open. You've probably come on here and thought, I could be a podcast host.
Why not?
Just to go into this new world. But it's just really nice to see. I think it's lovely to see how proactive you are. There's a lot of I won't say wrong, there's a lot of kind of bad things in the world of construction. We saw the collapse of ISG recently, which was a huge knock-on effect on the entire industry of construction. They were tied in to build X amount of schools.
I know.
So you understanding that is a great thing, because you can understand it from one angle, and it isn't about just chopping it off the bottom, because you've learned from your end, if we cut the arse out of this, ultimately we can sink that business. And it's like, well, that ain't our problem. The balancing act.
We have to play fair.
You've got to, and it is, and trying to find that balance. Construction world is cutthroat. I've been in it a long time.
It is.
It's brutal, and I've seen people win jobs, take school jobs to earn zero profit.
I know.
On the basis, though, that they get in with you,
I know,
and then they'll get you on the long term, and it's such a bad way.
It's awful,
and
I know they're doing it. And this is so when I first started working in that maintained primary school all them years ago, I remember sat there thinking, he's charging us what for what? It was like the tables have shifted almost the other way now. So where I felt like we used to get ripped off, and I'd be like, requote that. It was a bit, I always liken it to whenever you put the word wedding in front of everything, they just doubled the amount. Whenever they put school in front of it, they double the amount. We were easy pickings. We were an easy target. But I'm also really fair now in the role that I'm in, because I know that we've got a lot of money to spend on certain projects, but we need to be fair to the supply chain. So when somebody's putting in a tender and I know they've really cut that low because they just want to work with us, it upsets me, because I think that we want to provide that fair opportunity that they can bid for work. They might not win it every time, but at least they know we're assessing it fairly, and they will win a work at some point. So I'd say we've done a lot of work around that as well, making the specifications really clear. I mean, they were rubbish when I first started because I just used to bang them out rushing.
Yeah.
But we've taken the time to develop that by having that strategic project lead and our assets and health and safety manager. I think we're really clear about what we want. And people who we work with, so the suppliers we work with, know that we're assessing it fairly.
Yeah.
And they've got a fair crack at the whip. And if they do a good job and it's compliant and we're happy, then we'll work with you again next time.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see. Do you have the same challenges with other parts of procurement? I mean, construction's a bit different. It's, you don't see pen companies going bust every other week.
No,
Not like,
construction,
but in construction, and you're obviously see across procurement as the whole thing. Is it as cutthroat in different areas? Yeah. So I'm trying to think what else you'd buy. Like, do you buy laptops?
Yeah, it's cutthroat everywhere. Like, I have to. Do you know the biggest sharky cutthroat market?
Go on.
I'm saying this on a podcast, but it's people. It's supply agency. It's teachers.
Is it?
It is,
yeah.
And it really saddens me. We are about to try and do something a little bit different. I'm not sure what that is yet, but even the frameworks that we can use and everything that we've got in our toolkit to be able to make it better is not good enough. And
is this bringing new teachers in?
So it's the whole recruitment pipeline work. So having permanent staff, but it's the temporary staffing. So as schools, in all the time that I've known working in schools, we've always had a need for temporary staff. Yeah. So back in the days of local authority, they used to run a bank of 0 hours teachers, usually retired, that just wanted the odd day, or they'd semi-retired. So whenever we had somebody phoning sick or they were out on a course, you could ring them, get them in, and they were paid fairly.
Is this supply teacher? Is that what they are? Yeah. Do you know, I was wondering who's Mr. Jones, who we'd see once a month, so he was that.
Yeah.
Right,
so he would, that's the way it used to work back in the day.
Yeah.
Then we had this massive rise in academies, but what that did was it meant that part of the world was privatised. So if I give you an example that I've got to, like now, if I wanted a teaching assistant, we'd ring a private agency, they'd pay the teaching assistant, I don't know, minimum wage, and charge us £40 fee for the liberty of it, and that's a good fee.
Right.
So so what you've got is this unfair pay for workers, and so the money is being squeezed out the system by the private agencies,
because they're just finding you people.
Because they're finding us people. And we're so desperate as schools for people.
Wow. Okay,
and because there's this recruitment and retention crisis across education, that actually, I call it the sharky market.
But I guess, without them.
Well, we can't do it. We can't operate.
Do it, can you?
We're not safe,
So what's the answer?
So the answer is...
tricky. Go on, I'm interested now, because you've obviously thought about it.
Yeah.
Go on.
So what we've done is put in some interim agreements, and the agencies are willing to work with us. The ones that we're working with are... I'm not going to say best of a bad bunch, that's the wrong way to put it, but they're interested in making things better with us. So we've reduced the fee. We've got a set margin that they can work to. They have to pay their staff fairly. We won't work with them if not. And they're a necessary, we need them to operate. So we respect them and they respect us, and we have this agreement. They're compliant, that's fine. What we want to do is take some control back and actually build our own bank of supply staff that we can offer better terms to and reduce the margins that we're paying for these staff to operate in our schools. So that's the forward plan. Nationally, don't know what the plan is, but I think we need to do something. And there's a lot of other multi-academy trusts and a lot of colleagues of mine in those trusts that are saying exactly the same thing, that we really need some support on this.
Yeah.
So the NHS, they had NHS Bank. They've operated in that way for quite some time. In education, we're so far behind. It's unbelievable.
It's really interesting. It is. I think what was interesting about interviewing different people from education. I've worked in education a long time, but I don't know the backside of it. Like what you've been saying about. And I'd sit on so many interviews, even like you today, and I'd ask questions. I'm like, that sounds stupid, but it isn't, because it's. That's what this whole podcast is about. It's understanding that. I didn't know any of that. I say I didn't know to a point, but it's good getting it the inside. It's what people think you should know, but we don't, do we?
No.
We just put blinkers on.
You don't know what you don't know.
We think, them schools are doing all right. They're always moaning about money, and it's like, there's so much more that goes on.
Yeah.
So you're a bit different as a trust then, so you don't have a head of estates then, do you?
Well, no, I suppose you could.
That's you.
You could argue that.
That's one of your hats. So a lot of people that I've interviewed, head of estates, they run the team, and within their team they've got regional managers or they run it by themselves. What's the approach Nexus is taking here then? And why is it being done that way, do you think?
So we're doing things a little bit different. We've recently going through a transformation of this. So it's very much in its infancy. So I might come back in 6 months' time and say that didn't work. Oops, today's a down, made a mistake. But what we're trying to achieve is, I call it as an infrastructure of support for our schools. So we know, obviously, there's resource in the system, but we want to make sure that we're spending it in the right way, in the right place. So what we've done, we used to have everything contracted out, if you like. Health and safety was contracted out. And even though the liabilities sit where it should in a multi-academy trust, so ultimately the buck stops with the board and the chief exec, head teachers had delegated responsibility for estates, etc. But when you go to university to be a head, to be a teacher or a head, they don't necessarily go into the ins and outs of the estate. So you rely on your school resource manager or business manager and your site supervisor. And it almost felt for me like we were setting them up to fail. So we were holding them to account for all of these things, but we'd not put an infrastructure of support behind them to help. So we decided with the collaboration of our schools, so our heads have to buy into this service. It's not something that we can take out of a budget that's magic in the air. They're paying for this change. Is that we would take the financials centrally. So we would basically procure all the planned preventative maintenance contracts. So that's the first bit that we've done. And that is all of the compliance across the trust. And the reason for that is because we'd found issues with, a school resource manager or a site supervisor's contracted out for somebody to service the boiler thinking that it's right, and then it's not. And we're finding this when we're auditing. So all of that's taken centrally. We've got the buying power of that. So we've made a 20% saving across the trust. That's allowed us then. So Kev, who is my right-hand man in estates, absolutely amazing. He's our...
Big shout out to Kev. I know you mentioned Kev a couple of times. He's ace. We should meet him at some point.
So he's probably like, oh my God, Lana. But he's our assets and health and safety manager. So he's gone through his NEBOSH. He's the main point of call for anything. So he's auditing basically now. And then we've put in 2 regional site supervisors. So the reason, eventually, I'm hoping we'll have 2 more regional site supervisors, but we're starting this as a journey. And what that means is that all of that support that is needed within the estate, so I'm talking compliance, curb appeal, all your capital, all of that, we're making informed decisions on. So, for example, what used to happen is health and safety would drop an audit, and our heads would be expected to fix all these actions in the audit, and then we'd come back and say, you didn't fix it, but there was no way of supporting it. So the 2 regional site supervisors are there to support the school in covering those actions, and then Kev re-audits, and then we have an external audit, but it's making a more robust infrastructure of support. So the schools are buying that service. Yeah. Any reactive maintenance that comes out of that planned preventative maintenance, we're looking at it as part of the whole of the capital condition. Yep. So we're not just thinking your roof's falling in. We're looking at the assets that are on site as well. So what's happening with that extractor that's broken, and it's going to allow us to make more informed decisions. Mm-hmm. So if we've got hundreds of thousands of fire doors that come out of all of these surveys and that day-to-day maintenance that need sorting, we can take a strategic approach with a procurement exercise for that rather than doing it piecemeal. Yeah. We've got the site supervisors then operating on site, which big shout out to them. They are amazing. What they've really developed over the last 12 months is that team network. So all of this provides that estates team. So you've got, assets manager looking after it all, the regionals that are providing local support, the site supervisors that are on site, and all of them make up one big team. Yeah. We've then looked at a digital system that will provide that infrastructure, because one of the biggest things that I found amazingly frustrating as a business manager and coming into this role was that I had all this data across all these systems that are supposed to tell me how to support the estate and make recommendations to our exec management team around where we should be spending our money, but none of them talk to each other, and individually they're all screaming at me to give them resource. How do I actually know? So again, in that collaborative approach mindset, we asked our site supervisor network with Kev leading to make a decision around a digital system for recommendation to me so that I could recommend to Transformation Board.
Yep.
And what that will, so we've pressed the button on that.
I was going to say,
we're in the middle of rollout. Kev's ready to kill me.
Have you picked one?
We've picked one.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping it does, and I'll tell you in 6 months' time, is it provides us with the condition survey information, the health and safety audits, first aid incident reports, and all of that becomes so sustainability's in there, so it monitors our energy. It all allows us to make those strategic decisions, and they're not just like, "Ooh, I'll stick a solar panel on that roof."
No, you need that, don't you? You absolutely. So as a trust, then this is the first time that you are pulling it all together as digital.
Yeah.
Wow, I think you'll see an amazing difference.
I hope so.
Just coming from others that have kind of implemented it. I don't know on what level, but that'll make such a difference.
Hope so.
I did a talk up at Schools North East not long ago talking about reactive maintenance. I thought there was only like 20 people. It was like 100. I was like, oh my word. Talking to you earlier about talking in front of people. Oh no, I've gotten put right on spot here. It worked right well because I met some amazing people, but it was talking about reactive and planned maintenance. And when you've got a pot of £1 million, that can go so quickly.
Yeah.
We were doing roofs, like £400,000-500,000 roofs. So I'm like, that don't go far. It's one roof. 2 roofs if you get it badly, if you do it badly. But this goes down to then, are you doing service checks on all your parts of your building? But getting that data and holding it in one place. A lot of people don't. They're so reactive.
So exactly. One of the biggest things I've found is we'd have a roof done 3 years ago. This is over the history of my career. Nobody had passed that information on, and you'd end up with somebody drilling a hole in the roof and voiding your warranty. It's like we need all that in one place.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I asked for was, if that site supervisor is off, how do we know how to manage that estate? How do we know what capital investment it's had and what we can't touch for warranty? But also, how do I know how to set the fire alarm off to test it?
Yeah.
So I wanted everything in one place.
Yeah.
First aid incidents, we needed that robust health and safety procedure around, well, if somebody's constantly falling over in the same place, why are we not doing something about the pothole?
Yeah.
But how do you know?
Well,
unless you've got the data.
Just talking about networking and collaborating with other trusts and stuff like that. I did mention this on another podcast, actually, talking about back in the day, there was always like, this is our trust, we do what we do, please no one else come near us. Seems to have changed a lot now with a lot of networking groups forming. Are you all for cross-collaboration, sharing, working as a unit?
Absolutely.
It's
one of the biggest... One thing that Nexus has been always very good at is being really open to that. So they give, but also they take good practice away. And from the moment I walked in the door, that networking was encouraged. Go and have a look, see what other people do.
Yeah.
And I, sometimes we're the blind leading the blind. I'm not going to lie, because we're all doing it wrong. And one thing I'm working more on is stepping outside of industry and looking at how it's done in other industries, including private. Because I think we're 15 years behind them, if I'm honest. But networking is a huge part of what I do. That's how I find things out. How are you doing this? What's the best approach for that? And also just bouncing the idea. We might, be the one trust that goes first on an idea, and we're happy to learn the lessons. But why shouldn't we share that with other trusts? That's the right ethical thing to do. Absolutely, networking's a huge, huge part of learning.
Yeah, I've noticed that you're absolutely right. Just being in a room one day, and all of a sudden you get an idea out of absolutely nowhere, don't you?
Yeah.
And it isn't a waste of time. We get so caught up in reactionary moments that we never move forward. So no, I'm glad that you've got kind of a good opinion on that. It seems to be a common knowledge across. I ask it, trying to challenge people. Do you think networking's good? And everyone's like, yeah, it's amazing. Like, oh, there's another one. And I think genuinely that we have come together, and it's what it is, sharing best practice. The construction industry does it very well.
They do.
Very well. We will literally all sit in a room from 9 different businesses and talk about who's doing what.
I love that.
That. And do you know what? Actually, you should come into one of these.
I'd love it.
To come sit in and talk and listen into what's being said. So,
for me, because procurement and the commercial side spans across all of these areas, you have to know a little bit. You have to hear from the experts, don't you? I can't be possibly an expert in all of these areas. So sitting in on something like that allows me to be exposed to the experts that are talking about the everyday work that's happening.
Yeah.
It's more than valuable.
It is.
So, yeah.
And another thing as well, you doing this is really important. Like, honestly, it's hugely appreciated, like you coming on, because your journey, there'll be someone listening to this who goes, they're doing it that way. And the way that you've got this, you know, the way that you've got the trust set up, the way that you've gone through your journey, there'll be someone sat in finance now thinking, do you know what? I didn't even think I could work in schools. How cool is that? I'll be honest, I didn't. I'm thinking, oh, wow, yeah, she put 2 and 2 together here and you created the perfect job.
Yeah, do you know what? That is one thing I would say. I have got my dream job.
You have, haven't you?
Yeah,
you were a sucker for numbers in early days.
Yeah.
You went from banking to accounting. I'm thinking,
I mean, can you imagine me sat there? It's just not me.
It's not,
but I've got the best of everything. I've got the best of both. I definitely have. I absolutely love my job.
Advice for people then that want to do what you've done?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Don't let anything hold you back. You can learn along the way, can't you?
And you've had no real hiccups, have you?
Well,
I'm just pushing yourself. I say that's a wrong thing to say.
Well, I did. There's been a few things where I've thought, that was a bad move, Lana. But I've always worked with great people who have supported me. And I've learned a lot from great leaders. So in the schools that I've worked in, watching like my last head, how she led and managed people, it was amazing. Like I have learned so much, but I'm still learning. And I think that's where Nexus really fits me. The vision is learning together to be the best they can be. So we all learn together. It doesn't matter. We pick ourselves up when we make mistakes and we just keep improving.
And they encourage you
to encourage that. Yeah.
Do you do personal development?
I do.
You're big into that?
Yeah. Because I just like to keep, I think if you stand still, you get left behind. We have to learn. So my new thing is I'm learning about AI. I'm teaching myself.
We can have a full episode on that, actually. That's what we will do. We'll get you back on next year. We'll talk about, because that's a big thing that's happening.
I know. But I found out ChatGPT is my new PA. Like, I just have to check it for spelling.
Genuinely, ChatGPT 4, you just literally, it acts as like 9 different people.
Yeah.
It is absolutely incredible. It really is. And it's changed my world and everything.
I love it. So I will admit that I had to write a policy recently, so I did it. I thought I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get him to check it. So he checked it for me, told me all where I'd not quite got the regulations right.
What do you call him?
Well, I've not got a name from him yet.
You can call him a name and the response.
Oh no, I need to do that.
I called him Sid.
I'll go with Bob because he kind of matches Sid.
I love it. We can have a full chat. Look, Lana, it's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
I've
coming
really
on.
enjoyed that. Thank
Cheers.
you.